What is up, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Kalen and I'm training to complete an Ironman in 2021. So I am always trying to optimize my training and, like squeeze out all of the potential benefits from my training because I am on a deadline. I am 6 months away from my Ironman, and now that I'm past the halfway mark, it's starting to become a little bit more pressing and I'm starting to get stressed. So today I'm going to be talking about altitude training and how it can improve your performance as an endurance athlete. And I'll also cover how you can actually dabble in some altitude training even when you live at sea level. So guys, please leave a like and subscribe, and let's get right into this video. So just to give an overview of why altitude training is beneficial for athletes, essentially when you go to a higher altitude, the amount of oxygen and basically the density of oxygen decreases. And so you're forcing your body to go in sort of a hypoxic state, which means that it's in need of oxygen. By forcing your body to undergo this stress, you're actually forcing it to adapt. And usually how it adapts is by increased red blood cell volume. And the reason that this is significant is because your red blood cells are actually what transport the oxygen from your lungs to your muscles. So having more red blood cells will actually allow you to sustain higher training loads, especially when you go back to sea level. So my biggest motivator for actually researching this is because I live in Calgary, Canada, and the altitude in Calgary is 1,050 meters. And the race that I'm going to be doing is in Quebec, Canada, and that is going to be around 200 to 300 meters. So I thought in theory that I should be able to perform at least a bit better because I'm training like 700 to 800 meters higher in altitude. So with that in mind, I'll first outline the benefits of actually living in higher altitudes. So a review on higher altitude training actually states that people living in higher altitudes do have higher red blood cell counts than people living at sea level. Unfortunately for me, the difference starts off super small and then exponentially increases once it hits like 1,500 meters. So my dream of being super fast just because my race is at a lower altitude is destroyed. Something that I thought would be pretty important to mention is that each percentage difference between sea level and altitude takes about 1 week to adapt to, which is pretty significant. Okay, so now that my dreams are crushed, let's see how we can benefit from prolonged periods of training at altitude. One study had 10 athletes train at 2,050 meters for 3 weeks, and they saw increases in their red blood cell volume of about 10 to 15%. The review that I mentioned earlier states that athletes that train 2 to 3 weeks in an altitude of around 2,000 to 2,700 meters saw increases in their hemoglobin concentrations of about 1 to 4%. To be honest, I'm not actually 100% sure how to compare these two results because they are two different measurements, but in the end of the day, they are both positive. Finally, I think that it should definitely be noted that your red blood cell volume actually does go back to normal after around 2 weeks. But I think that it's still beneficial if you're, say, flying into a race. So it's starting to become pretty obvious that you need to live at like an extremely high altitude, or you need to train at a moderate altitude to see any real benefits. So my question is it possible to simulate altitude training at sea level? And the answer is yes. There are a few methods such as nitrogen dilution, hypoxic sleeping devices, or intermittent altitude training. I won't go into too much detail about the first two because they seem pretty expensive and out of reach for normal people. So this is the exciting part. Intermittent altitude training, which is essentially going up to altitude and then training for 1 to 2 hours, has been shown to be beneficial. One study has shown an increase in hemoglobin, total work capacity, and also maximal power output after 3 to 4 weeks of training at 2,300 meters for 60 to 90 minutes. What I think is awesome about this is essentially any hike can give you these benefits. I just wanted to quickly note that almost every single study mentioned that iron supplementation is necessary to optimize the mechanism that's associated with the red blood cell volume increase. They even state that you should start iron supplementation 3 to 4 weeks before ascending if you're spending a prolonged period of time at altitude. In summary, there are definitely benefits to using altitude training for endurance performance. The most realistic approach for us normal people is to basically use intermittent altitude training by essentially going on a hike that lasts at least an hour. So yeah, once it warms up, I'm definitely gonna be trying to go out on some hikes or maybe even cycle around in the mountains, which sounds amazing. And hopefully I'll be able to squeeze out that extra 1 or 2% of performance. Anyways, guys, that's the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys found some value from it. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week for another video.